Back with you, Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. So talking about the state of the Democrat Party and kind of where they are, and Donald in Oxford sends us a message. He says, what about Bill Maher, a former liberal turned middle ground guy, kind of like John Rogan? And I responded, no, he's still a full-on liberal. He just doesn't do the bat-poo crazy stuff that some of the farther reaches of the Democrat Party do. But that's the state of Democrats today, that we have almost accepted Bill Maher as middle of the road. But here's the thing, in all of this, whether it's the AP story that we were talking about the seeds of discord being sown within the Trump administration, that there's a kernel of truth there, because Republicans don't always handle prosperity well. So let's talk about that right now with our next guest. William Russell joins us from D.C. this morning. We got a lot going on, including our colleague Gerard Gibbert, who will be inside the Eisenhower office building later for Radio Row from the White House, and looking forward to that. William's been around the Trump campaign for a while, former advisor to the Trump campaign, state director here in Mississippi. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Richard. Thanks for having me back on. It's good to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us. So let's talk about this idea of Republicans and this Trump administration handling prosperity. So much talk about the mandate, right? You got the House, you got the Senate, you got the White House, you got the popular vote.
Sure.
And one of the things that was always concerning to me is, okay, now will everybody pull in the same direction to get what Donald Trump wants done and what the people of the United States voted for done? We certainly have seen the executive branch holding up its end of the bargain. Is Congress doing enough right now?
You know, that's a good question, and I think that time will tell, especially as we consider reconciliation and especially as we talk about the Trump tax cuts that are coming down the pipe. It's always been kind of one of the concerns, at least that I've had, is leading on the legislative front. Part of that is on the president to lay out a legislative agenda. Then he uses a variety of different mediums, whether it's State of the Union, policy speeches across the country. He uses those opportunities to kind of lay out some of his legislative priorities. But it's also on Congress to step up, not be afraid of what happens at the midterms or what could happen at the midterms, not being afraid of losing a seat or losing a majority, instead just focusing on what is exactly in front of them right now. And to your point, the mandate that came last November is exactly that. And historically, Republicans have a tough time stepping up to the plate. You know, they're very good at saying no. We saw that during the Obama years where it was no to everything. And they did a really good job of holding the line. But the first time that they've had this opportunity in quite some time to lead on a legislative front, it's been difficult to coalesce everyone behind one mission, right? And I don't fault one leader for that. Like I look at Speaker Johnson in the House. I mean, he's got a tough job to do.
He's got his hands full. Whew.
Yeah, with a razor thin majority, and he's going to pull everybody together. But I think it speaks to the heart of the leader, the heart of the leadership. Like, we have to stand up, put aside what may or may not happen, and just trudge forward with the understanding that this is what's been asked of us. And, you know, damn the torpedoes kind of thing. Like, we have to move forward.
Yeah, and you know, you brought up something a second ago, that midterms, which, by the way, midterms get here really fast. I mean, that's part of the issue that you've got right now is you go through an inauguration, and it's like, you better get stuff done in the first 100 days because campaign season starts at like 200 days.
Right.
The idea, though, that you got Republicans who have an eye on a midterm, I'm just wondering if that's faulty logic from those Republicans that you're talking about, that the American people don't actually want them to do what they voted Donald Trump to do and are more frustrated with the ones, and I'm not even talking about Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. I'm talking about the Republicans that you expect to be able to lean on to get legislative stuff done, that maybe you're kind of throwing up some roadblocks.
Well, I think that the Republican caucus as a whole has always kind of struggled with this. You've brought up on the last segment, Democrats and how well they get together and how they do think further on out, and they look ahead at what's coming down the pipe, and they're able to, whenever they're dealing with an issue, they get everybody in a room and they say, this is how we're going to vote. We're going to vote as a block. This is what we're going to do.
And no one breaks heck amongst themselves.
Right. But eventually they all come together and no one breaks ranks, right? Everyone's get their voices heard. Everyone has their conversations, and then they all get together and they all go vote as a block. We don't see that with the Republican Party, and that's one of the reasons why we see, when Matt Gaetz was in Congress, Matt Gaetz is a great example of over here on the far right. And then we've got the Susan Collins on the centrists, almost some would say left side of the aisle. And that's kind of the Republican Party. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Republican Party, is because we're a party of kind of free thinkers, free marketeers, the ones who are willing to go down each road and talk about the different avenues that we could take to fix the country, right? And I think that that's the biggest difference. That's the dichotomy between the two parties. And it's just something that's always going to be a struggle for Republican leadership here in D.C., whether it be in the House or the Senate or on the executive branch side of things.
It's interesting because when you think about on the Senate side of things, I think I would label John Thune, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is kind of a middle of the Republican Party kind of guy. He's not way to the right within the realm of the Republican Party, but he's not way to the left. And I think that's probably where most Americans align. But the right side of the Republican Party is really, really loud right now. Right.
Well, and it's part of guys like Senator Thune, Majority Leader Thune. It's his responsibility to kind of sift through the noise to get the job done. And I got to give it to him. I got to give it to he and his staff for doing a very good job of pushing through presidential appointments. Now, that's a huge part of the first 100 days for any president, is getting his staff in power. Same thing's going to happen when we start appointing judges, very much like the first Trump administration. One of the shining stars that came out of that Trump administration, 45, was the fact that we put judges on benches, and that all started with the Senate. It just began and ended with the Senate and the Senate leadership there. And so I don't think it's.
And we thought at the time the Supreme Court appointments were the shining stars, and I may be faulty in my logic here, but I thought that was the lasting legacy that Donald Trump's first presidency was. Hey, the appointments that he made on the Supreme Court put this in a place that is more conservative than it has previously been. But this weird thing happens to judges that are considered to be conservative. When they get to the Supreme Court, they seem to lose some of that perspective along the way.
You're not wrong about that, but it's not just about the Supreme Court, Richard. And you know how this works. There's the variety of levels all the way down the federal court system that I think are still true, and I think they're still going to have good. I mean, let's think about the judges and just the reach that they've had just in the first 4 months of the Trump administration. Right, when the president comes out with an executive order, when the president says we're going to deport a group of illegal immigrants that we know are here illegally. We've caught them, and we're going to move them back to their home country, or we're going to deport them. You have just a regular circuit court judge that says, puts his foot down and says, we're not going to allow that to happen. That's the power of the judges. And that's why it's important, not just on the Supreme Court side. It's part of the legacy that Donald Trump left, to your point. And it's going to be part of this legacy this time. I mean, the 45 administration, there were three things that Donald Trump did really well. He helped restore the economy. He made a great foreign policy and moved the ball forward incredibly on a global scale. And then there were the judges. And I firmly believe that that's what we're going to watch in 47 now, are those three things. Donald Trump has never been one he's never been so much a leader on the legislative side of things, which is why I put a lot of the onus on Congress to go out and find the good legislation that they can work on, put bills on the president's desk. The president's going to lead in those other three areas because he's already done that. He's proven it. And we're going to see that now. I mean, we see that now with the tariffs. He's leading. He's bringing countries back to us. We're renegotiating trade deals and getting rid of tariffs. We're going to see that happen kind of as we move forward as well.
You got time to hang through the break?
Absolutely.
All right, William Russell, we're going to continue the conversation. So these stories about infighting within Team Trump at the highest level, at the secretary level, are they exaggerated, or is there something to be concerned about? We'll get to that next. William Russell, Trump campaign advisor, state director for the Trump campaign in Mississippi, is my guest. It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Mississippi, William Russell is my guest. I know I said this last time you were on. I'm just going to say it again because I love it. The Twitter handle at Big Willie Russ. Follow William. You can do that at Big Willie Russ on X.
And if you want like really terrible baseball takes, Mississippi State baseball takes, I'm good at that too. Yeah? We won't talk about this past weekend, the bullpen failures. No.
You gonna jump on the jet and come home for the Governor's Cup tonight?
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. But little kids, you know how it is.
I certainly do know how it is. So I was in the last segment. I was reading a little bit of this AP story that came out. I don't know if you've seen this or not this morning, where the lead is, as controversies pile up, Trump allies increasingly turn on one another. We got the stuff within the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, with Pete Hegseth and staffers who've been fired, who are kind of telling all and trying to sow seeds of discord. There are rumblings that some of the cabinet members don't like each other, whether it's Peter Navarro and Elon Musk calling him dumb as a sack of hammers, which, by the way, is one of the great insults of all time. Is there discord among the ranks? Is that normal? It feels like 3 months in, this administration has held the line together better than they did 4 years ago, or 8 years ago.
Yeah, I'd say nothing's new here. This is just kind of palace intrigue stuff. It has always been. There's always going to be conflict, right? I mean, you got so many good people, so many great thinkers that are in a room together, right? And they are there because of their previous success. And so there's obviously a little bit of ego that plays into all of this. I firmly believe, and this is kind of, you can track this through Donald Trump's political career, starting all the way back when he launched his campaign in 2015 with Corey Lewandowski, and how he went through different campaign managers for different times. The same thing in the past in 45 administration, how he went through different chiefs of staff, different cabinet secretaries for the time that they were needed, right? I don't feel as if, at least while working here and working over in the building and with various agencies around the city, I don't feel that kind of angst. I don't feel that kind of frustration with the rest of the staff. I think some of it's palace intrigue. I think some of it's legitimate, but I have full confidence that they're going to be able to work out a lot of the issues that they run into. And I would say, knowing the president, I would assume, I feel confident actually in saying that Pete Hegseth will find his way through some of the DOD issues. I maintain that Pete's the right choice. We needed a war fighter. We needed somebody who was not focused on the military-industrial complex in that job. And that's exactly what Pete is.
And William, whether you're talking about Pete Hegseth or Scott Bessent or Tom Homan in his role or Mike Waltz or Kristi Noem or whomever, Donald Trump, more than any president that I can remember in recent years, with filling out his cabinet, is doing what he said he was going to do. Now, it would be nice if he could do some of it legislatively and not all by executive order.
Sure.
But all of the things that he said and his surrogates that have turned into cabinet secretaries said they were going to do, they're doing. There shouldn't really be surprise here. I think the only surprise is a politician following through on what they said they were going to do on the campaign trail.
I think that's right, and well, I know that's right. I mean, the president and his team have shown the way just in the first couple of months. Now, there are going to obviously be a variety of different opinions, especially like the trade conversation has been one of the more heated conversations because you have different factions throughout the White House and throughout the administration wide of who wants what. Right? You've got China hawks with like Peter Navarro. You've got guys like Elon Musk, who's kind of wanting to see some of the issues with China kind of go away because he and Tesla have vested interest in China. You can look at a guy like Scott Bessent, who wants to see the market rise. You can look at a guy like Howard Lutnick, Commerce, who's a bonds guy, so he loves the chaos. This is really good for his portfolio. Like, that's not his portfolio, but it's what his company manages. Like, there's a variety of different attitudes and different thought processes behind what we're doing, not just here domestically, but on a global scale. And part of what's drawing out some of these articles are exactly that. It's just insider baseball, just palace intrigue stuff.
Yeah. We'll leave it here. This is an interesting message. One of the big differences in 45 and 47 is you got a bunch of people that are not from inside the Beltway that have come in and seem to be shaking things up, and that is not sitting well with a lot of long-time inside the Beltway guys. William, always enjoy the conversations. I hope you have a wonderful day. Great three-piece suit this morning. Looking dapper, and we'll
thanks, sir.
Soon.
All right,
William
thanks,
Russell,
Richard.
he is Trump advisor, former Trump advisor, and Trump campaign chair, former in Mississippi as well, coming to us from Capitol Hill this morning. 8 o'clock hour coming up. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi. We're back with you right after this.